So ask yourself, what do I need to do to help the leaders around me? Or maybe we should ask ourselves, what can I do for myself to be a more effective leader? How many of you believe, as I do, that by show of hands, we can learn from other people's experience? We can learn from other leaders. Agreed? Absolutely. I heard that phrase years ago, OPE, other people's experience. So we can learn from the School of Hard Knocks, or we can say, hey, how would you handle this? And I'm convinced the leaders that are willing to look at those help. So one thing I try to do is share experiences right up front when I work with leaders. And I'll give you a couple snapshots. A woman in a session of sharp leaders, about 16 leaders in the room, we were talking about good leaders and poor leaders and some of the things that go with that. And she said, I've got one for you. What do you do when you work for a leader for over 10 years and to this day he doesn't know anything about you personally? And I said, before I respond, let me ask you a quick question. When you say anything personally, can you give us a quick example? And she said, sure. I've got a picture of my boys on my desk, 2 sons, and never once has he said, nice looking guys, or what age are they? Any sports? I said, really? She said, yep. 10 years? 10 years. And I asked the group, I said, before I respond, what do you think? If her boss did show a little more personal interest, might that change the dynamics, or would he get more out of her? And the heads went up and down, and they said, absolutely. And I thought, how sad. So I said, let's go back to you then. I said, would it make a difference if you did? And I still remember her words. She said, it certainly would be a good start. She said, as it is now, don't get me wrong, I love my job. I put in my time. I'm there for the clock from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, whatever the day calls for. And she said, the punchline, I won't lift a finger more for him than I have to. Now, there's leaders that she works with that aren't like that, but sometimes you can have a team of 10 leaders, and it may just be 1 in 10 that has that dynamic, and then others are more on average or norm. So contrast that with another leader, another session, another room, group of leaders, same conversation, good bosses, good leaders, poor leaders. He said, I've got one for you. About 8 years ago, I worked for a boss that was the best boss I ever had. I still remember him very clearly. I don't know what it was about him, but if he asked you to go through a cinder block wall, you'd figure out a way to do it. He says, you wouldn't want to let him down. And then he went on to say, and you knew he would do the same for you. Wow. So am I a cinder block wall leader, or am I a not ask questions about my employee picture leader? Do you agree people decorate their office sometimes with a little bit of hints about themselves? Natural conversation starters. One more quick one. The female executive in a room, she said, I'm here on the executive team only because I once worked for the boss from hell. And I said, explain, please. And she said, I had a boss that I worked for. He did not know how to treat people. In fact, I took notes on how not to treat people. It was that bad. And she said, I was convinced that I had to make a choice. Either quit, and some did, she said, or stick with it for 3 years because I knew he was going to retire eventually, and learn from his mistakes. And she said, I took a lot of notes. And she goes, I vowed that I would never treat other people that way. And to her credit, she was an executive VP because of that. So, other people's experience, what kind of leader are you? What kind of leader are I? How do we help the leaders around us to be more effective? I believe those shared experiences, those shared stories, and also just saying what works for me, what doesn't work for me, what does followership look for? How about this? How do you like to be led? How many of you have ever had your boss say, how do you like to be led? A few, right? But wouldn't you agree every hand should go up? Every leader should be asking employees, how do you want that relationship to be? How do you want to be led? And I'm convinced if we do that, we'll have more people that want us to succeed as leaders and want to follow under our leadership.